Hey, I want to tell you about the worst professor I ever had in college. Dr. Herschel was the worst professor I ever had in college. He was the professor that your teachers in high school warn you about. Like, there's the memes all the time of when teachers are like, hey, this won't fly in high school. You're not going to be able to, eat food in class, and you're not going to be able to. This is the professor that your professors are warning you about when you get to college. He was the meanest professor. Here's how I got in his class. First of all, this is what happens when you wait too long to start scheduling your classes. In college, you have to kind of be ahead of the game and schedule what classes you're going to take next. I waited too long till all of the classes were full, and this was the only option I had left was Dr. Herschel's world history class. There's a couple red flags that I chose to ignore. The first one was that he wrote his own textbook. If you were in the college crowd, you maybe know, if a professor writes their own textbook, it's a red flag. It's going to be a hard course if they write their own textbook. So that was one of the ones I ignored. The other one, my first week of school back, I would always go and just do a walk around campus and check out where my classes were on campus. I would want to see all the classrooms, know how long my walk was to get from each class to the next. I've learned that this class was in the library basement in a really dimly lit room. Only half the lights worked. There was no windows, no bathrooms anywhere close, and there was a really big sign on the door that said either no food or leave. If you wanted to bring food into class, it was like a don't come situation because you can't eat in here. Every day, this dude would start class. This is how he started the first day. This is how he started every day. Every day he started the class with this quote. He'd walk in, he would slam the door, and he would go, if you don't say what you mean, you won't mean what you say. And if you don't mean what you say, you won't say what you mean. Let's begin. And we would go into class, and this is the way his class worked. He said, hey, I've got an assigned reading from the textbook that I wrote. If you do this reading, you better have done the reading and come to class, and all we're going to do for the whole 50 minutes of this class period is I'm going to ask questions about the reading to each person. Every single person in class is going to get one of these questions. If you don't answer it correctly or you don't know the answer, you have to drop the course or you'll fail. At any point, the whole entire semester, if you don't know the answer or you get it or you didn't do the reading, you were told to either drop the class, don't come to class, or you were going to fail. This was the bottom line. I thought he was kidding. There were 3 people on the first day that dropped the class. There were about 18 in this class of about 40 that dropped and didn't even come to the first day class. And I was like, I think I'm ready for this challenge. I was like a history major for a while in college. So I was like, I think I can do this. I want to try this. I want to try this out. So he would spend the full 15 minutes asking all of these questions, very specific from the reading. I'm proud to say that as intimidating as that sounds, I'm proud to say that I dropped that class so fast. There was no way on earth that I was going to be able to answer any of those questions. That I made it through one class period, and I answered a question, and I was right, but I also peed my pants, so it wasn't worth the emotional damage that I sustained from that class. Years later, I don't think of that class often. I don't think of Dr. Herschel. I'm pretty sure I burned the textbook. I was done with all of that. In fact, I really try to forget that I'm when I say I peed my pants in a public setting, I'm not. That's how scared. I wish I was making a youth pastor joke where they over exaggerate stories. This was a common experience of people in his class. He was that intense. So, fun fact: I literally peed my pants in this dude's class. I don't know why I had to prove that to you guys. That just really. I was going to say trying to get it to soak in, but that wasn't what I was trying. Sorry. I've spent a lot of time not thinking about that class, but thinking about the quote that he would start every day of class with. It's this quote. You'll see it up on the screen. It says, if you don't say what you mean, you won't mean what you say. And if you don't mean what you say, you won't say what you mean. When he said this in class, I thought it was the most confusing sentence. I still think there's something kind of weird about it. I didn't quite connect everything. But I've come to realize it was a lot more profound than I thought. Here's why. I'll unpack how this kind of applies to where I took this. He starts with, if you don't say what you mean, you won't mean what you say. In other words, what I think he's saying is that authenticity is really important. And if you can't be authentically you, there might be a disconnect between what your thoughts were and what you're actually saying. Have you ever felt that disconnect before? You have a thought in your head, but you don't really know how to put words to it, and all of a sudden you've offended someone. Or you said something and you didn't quite mean it, but that's just the way it came out of your head. If you can't be authentic, there might be a disconnect there. On the second half of it, he said, if you don't mean what you say, you won't say what you mean. I take that to mean that words without conviction or sincerity, they fall flat. They make it so it's not meaningful. The things we're saying, the way we're trying to connect, it's not meaningful. An authentic communication requires thoughtfulness and purpose. I think we hear a lot about authenticity, specifically from your generation, like Gen Z and Gen Alpha. These two generations, like a quick pause and just shout out to your guys' people and the people you go to school with and your siblings and things like that. There has been this huge shift in the world, and especially as I've seen, even in my lifetime, in the church world, because what your generation is really good at is sniffing out when people aren't being authentic. Like, your generation would you agree with this, that you can tell when someone's just really not like who they're trying to be, or like sometimes it's someone who's just trying way too hard to be a certain, like to show up a certain way? Your generation can pick these things out really well. Thank goodness that churches started to pay attention to your ability to do this, because authenticity was not always a word that was thrown around on church staffs and in church cultures. But thank goodness church leaders were paying attention to your generation starting to call out and walk away from places of high inauthenticity. And so you have helped shape the church by calling out things that aren't real. Jesus was authentic, and there were a lot of people who just weren't in their faith. We've seen this throughout like all of history. This is true of anything. Your generation helped start to call some of this out and help people live more authentically into who God created them to be. You've done this in the church. You've helped the church become more authentic. Now, I'm not saying we're perfect. We're figuring it out. Remember, we said that like an art is something that can't be mastered but always has to be practiced. It's because of your generation. You have shifted, placing a higher value on authenticity. Last week was the first week in a new series that we're starting called The Art of Friendship. Friendships start in weird ways. This is what we unpack: the awkward ways with incomplete thoughts, with awkward communication, moments where we're like talking to someone and we're like, oh my gosh, you care about that too? Like, I had this in conversation in line with like a Royals fan the other day who like doesn't like the right fielder. And this happened to be how we started talking. But we became friends because like I think that he should get traded. Anyway, that's a separate conversation. Shouldn't say that because this is going online. I love the Royals. Shout out to the Royals. Okay, anyway, this is how friendships start. A lot of times there's awkward thoughts, there's awkward communication, there's these awkward moments where we're like we realize we have something in common, or like I said last week, I had a friend who started a friendship with me in like a super weird way. What we did last week is we turned back to the beginning of the Bible in Genesis, the first book of the Bible. It's the creation story, is maybe how you've heard it coined before. God is creating, and all he's doing this whole entire time is he's creating mountains, and he's saying like, oh, this is good. And then he's creating seas over here, and he's like, oh my gosh, this is good. And he creates humans, and he's like, oh, this is so good. This is very good. And then for the first time in all of history, God says something isn't good. It's to be alone. God says the first thing that he says is not good is for us to be alone. We unpacked a medical phrase that's in medical journals everywhere now called the loneliness epidemic. We looked at how loneliness is sweeping the world. Loneliness, who would have thought, is harming us both physically, spiritually, and emotionally. But Jesus, in his final act of salvation by dying on the cross, what he did is he said, hey, this is an act of friendship. Jesus said his final act of dying on the cross, he said, there's nothing greater that I can do than lay down my life for my friends. Jesus is telling his disciples, now I call you my friends. He describes his final act as an act of friendship. So why would we do a whole series on friendship? Here's why, because we know this is true. We struggle with friendship. Is that a fair baseline to say here? Friendship. It's the thing that this author, this book we're going through, would say we're created for. We're made for people. We're made for relationships and friendship, but we suck at it. We're really bad at making friendship. Maintaining friendships takes a lot of work. And repairing friendships is really exhausting and sometimes feels really tricky to do. Friendship is really difficult to do. And what happens is there's this kind of drift slowly into loneliness, where when we sin, it does two things. We start to pull ourselves away from friendships. We start to pull away ourselves from God. Have you ever felt this? When you've got something really tough going on in your life, instead of going to the people who can help you, you actually start pulling away from them, and you start pulling yourself further away from God. You start pulling yourself away further from your friends, and we drift into this loneliness. This is part of the reason why God tells Adam, hey, it's not good for you to be alone. What we do, we pull ourselves away from friendship. We separate ourselves from God. We hide our face and try to cover up our sin because we're not sure if we're lovable. Here's the thing. Being fully known is scary, risky, and seems dangerous. Would you say that's true? To be fully known can be scary, can be risky, can be dangerous. Through this series, what we're doing is we want to help bring new light to the battle for friendship, where you can be fully known and fully loved. That's how we described a friend. To be someone who knows you fully and loves you anyway. Through this series, we'll unpack a few arts to be practiced. You'll learn what it means to be a good friend, how to find good friends, what to do when friendship gets hard and loneliness seems undefeatable. Because that's what a friend is, someone who knows you fully and loves you anyway. I want to tell you about one of my friends who knew me fully and loves me anyway. Now, this is like a past tense friend. We moved like different states, really far away, and we don't talk as much anymore. We send these text messages back and forth. We're like, hey, we should talk on the phone. And that's about all our all our communication is at this point. But this was my friend Zach, who's my closest friend all through high school and college. You can think back with me. In my head, I'll kind of paint the picture. It's 2015. We're sitting in my Toyota RAV4 in front of his dorms. I'm dropping him off after we were hanging out. And for some reason, I'm sure that it felt so uncomfortable and awkward on his side of things, but for some reason, we're sitting in my car in the front of his dorms, and I said, hey, Zach, I want to tell you something. I feel really lonely. Which, like, I don't know how you would perceive that if your friend, like, when you're trying to get them out of the car and say bye, says, like, hey, I got stuff going on. But I was like, hey, dude, I feel like I don't have any friends. I feel so lonely right now. I had no real friends, I told him. I had nobody who, like, knew me really well. Zach responded in the way that Zach did with stuff like this. He was super kind. He started inviting me to hang out more and introducing me to his friends and more people. We started playing kickball, which is like, I don't know, I didn't know that was a part of like a college experience, but for me, we like kickball all the time. And we actually decided, like, with our kickball team, we were like, dude, what if we started like an intramural softball team? Intramural is essentially athletics for athletes that weren't good enough to be athletes in college. That's a fair way maybe to describe. I'm just kidding. Don't tell any intramural people I said that. But we started a softball team. We were really bad. We did not win one game. Our team name was Game Canceled because we hoped that the way it showed up in the app, we hoped that the other team would think the game wasn't happening. So if we said, like, it was like, you know, like the A team versus Game Canceled, we hoped that they would say, oh, man, there's no game. Guess we're not playing tonight. We hoped that they would forfeit. That was our best chance of winning. That's all that we could try and figure out to do. Fast forward to 2016, Zach's now surrounded me with a bunch of people, and I'm not, like, feeling the same way. Like, I feel like I have people who know me. We're almost back in the exact same situation. We're sitting in my car in front of his dorms, and I, like, was like, hey, Zach, can I tell you something that I've been dealing with? And he was like, well, I'm actually tired, and it's like 11:30, and I'd like to I have like a test tomorrow. And I was like, yeah, I feel really lonely. I feel so bad for him, like, looking back in this moment. But I told him, like, hey, I feel like I've been pulling away from the people who, like, I've been connected to. I have friends, but I don't have anyone who knows what's going on in my life. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to tell you something I'm really working through. I shared some, like, really just some sin I'd been struggling with my life. I was just totally alone in sin. Now, there are theologians all over the world who would call being alone in sin one of the most, like, awful things you can live in. I think if we really thought about it for a second, the moments where we're the most lonely and the most in sin sometimes are our darkest moments, right? It can feel like we're totally alone in these moments. I thank God that I had someone that I could be vulnerable and honest with. There's no loneliness like being alone in sin, but it's in these moments when I was honest and vulnerable, I sense God doing what he does. He was finding me. God used my friend Zach to know me fully and love me anyway. Zach helped me with my sin and loneliness and offered love and help and taught me that my sin doesn't withhold relationship from me. I thought that I wasn't making friends because I was so deep in sin. What Zach really, like, amazingly pointed out to me, this is still so profound. He said this exact thing. He said that sin doesn't, like, keep you from relationship. It actually shows you the need for it. Because I was so alone in, like, how I was experiencing life, and I was pulling away from God. And Zach was like, no, actually, the stuff that you're experiencing that's really hard in your life right now, it shows you why you need people around you. Because that's why we were created. We were made for people. We were made for each other. My confession with Zach was a huge, vulnerable, and honest moment that really, I want to just tell you transparently, felt super uncomfortable. I still look back at that as, like, one of the most awkward moments of my life, telling him exactly what was going on. But it brought me closer to not only Zach, but also to God. And I felt this truth, that a friend is someone who knows you fully and loves you anyway. That's the truth that I felt in this moment with Zach when he was helping me. I learned this, that Zach was not surprised in the slightest that I was a sinner. It did not put off an alert for him that was like, oh my gosh, this dude, like, sins. I never would have thought that of him. In fact, did you know everyone knows you're a sinner, just so everyone is on the same page here. No one's going to be surprised that you've got stuff in your life. That's just part of being human. And he knew this because he was a sinner too. He knew I was a sinner and knew that I needed people around me to help me thrive in faith and in friendship and in life. I also learned this, and I live by this now, and the author pointed this out in the book too that we've been going through. It's that you don't have to tell everyone everything, but you've got to have someone that you can tell anything to. You don't have to tell anybody everything going on in your life, but you really got to have someone that you can tell anything to. Someone who knows you fully. Now, I'll pause after I say it. Someone who knows you fully, you can say anything and they will love you no matter what. You've got to have people like this in your life. It's not a long list. Maybe we were doing this activity with the circle, the target in your small groups now, and you may have been sitting there thinking I don't know who I would put in this center circle. This feels really tough to put someone here. Or maybe you're in the middle circle and you're boy, my list is so long of names until I get into the people that I would feel safe telling literally anything about me. We did a study last year with students, and a lot of you participated in the study at the end of the year, and we asked the question, we said, do you agree or disagree? Do you feel comfortable sharing even your darkest secrets with your closest friends? And the vast majority of you said no. I'm not trying to come down on anybody or say that this is a horribly wrong thing or that you did anything wrong. As humans, this is something we naturally struggle with, is being fully ourselves with people. Authenticity. We struggle with this. At the same time we can call it out, we also struggle with it as well. We have to have people who we can tell anything to, who we can live honestly and vulnerably with. And each week of this series, we're looking at a couple arts that make this type of friendship possible, the type of friendship where we can be totally vulnerable and we can be totally honest. Here's why. Friendship requires vulnerability. We're going to look at two arts tonight, vulnerability and honesty. The first one is vulnerability. Friendship requires vulnerability, which is not easy, and here's why. Because probably you've very seldom been taught to be vulnerable. The language you've actually been taught for most of your life is just sharing. I want to differentiate those two things. They are very different things. You've been taught to share. Sharing is what we do when we update people on our lives. But vulnerability is what we do when we let people into our lives. There's a really big difference here. Think about it. There's a reason why Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, all these social media, there's a reason why they call it sharing and not being vulnerable, right? That would be a weird thing to post a picture and being called oh, I'm going to be vulnerable on Instagram with my prom pictures. This is the reason why there's a difference in these two things. Vulnerability, what it means is having the courage to speak the truth about yourself. Here's the truth about truth. It means even the hard parts and the nasty pieces of your life, the thing about truth is that it's scary. The thing about truth is that it's also sacred. Truth can be really hard to face. And now hear this, sharing is a really great thing. Sharing is useful, it's important for relationship, but I think we all know and feel that our followers on social media don't necessarily make us feel known. They don't know us fully and love us anyway. I've got a feeling if you looked at your socials right now, there's probably a high number of people that you say you don't even know at all. There are probably people who follow you who you've never met. If there's a church version of being vulnerable, here's where the inauthenticity comes in. I think sometimes we've all heard someone say yeah, I'm not really feeling on fire for God right now. And kind of just leave the conversation right there. We're really comfortable saying yeah, I'm not on a mountaintop right now. I don't feel like I did at camp. Maybe a more authentic version, a vulnerable version of that you're allowed to say around here, just so you know, a more vulnerable version of that might be hey, I'm kind of doubting if this whole God thing is real. Maybe you've been in these two camps where you've told people I'm not on fire right now. Me and God are just not as close as we used to been. And maybe there's something deeper in you that's saying I don't really know if I want to be a Christian anymore. I see how Christians act. I don't know if I can do it. And that's what we don't want to say at church, right? We never want to say the honest thing sometimes when it comes to stuff like this, but it's stuff that that God gives us people around us to be able to process things like this. I hope and pray that each of us have someone who can test, there it is. I hope and pray that each of us have someone who knows us fully, knows these things about you, and loves you anyway. And just a quick plug, this is part of the reason why we build movement with small group leaders in the room. Now, I'm not saying your small group leader is going to be your greatest friend throughout all of your life and that they need to be the person that you tell every single thing to. But small group leaders, you can tell me if I'm wrong, But I have a feeling, I know each of you well enough to know that like the people in your small group, I hope you so know that your small group leader knows what they know about you and loves you anyway. And the things they don't know about you, I hope you deeply know that your small group leaders will love you anyway. Like, don't doubt that whatever's going on in your life and whatever sin you've got going on or whatever you're struggling with or whatever the thing is that you just don't want to say, please know that your small group leader still loves you anyway. That's true of this place. These moments of encouragement and these extraordinary moments, they're really important. But truth, vulnerability, it's sacred. Now, there's some rules for vulnerability here. These are the two rules when it comes to vulnerability. The first one is that because truth is sacred and scary, here's why. We have to share it wisely to the right person. Now, you don't have to tell everyone everything. You have to be able to tell someone anything. There's a right time and there's a right person to say these things to. Have you ever been told some like massive news right before you were doing something and you're like, what am I supposed to do with this? How am I supposed to just act natural right now that you just like told me that like there's something huge going on in your life? How am I supposed to do this? There's a right time and a right person to tell these things to. When it's the person, you need to make sure it's someone who can handle the vulnerability that you're going to share with them. Not everyone is the right person for this. Not everyone, in fact, I would say not everyone can know you fully. That's hard to do. If you tell everything to anyone, what actually happens in life is that people will start pulling away from you because not everyone is going to know you fully. There's a right time to share vulnerably. The right time and place and environment really matters because, again, truth is both scary and sacred. But compare that feeling to when you've been able to be vulnerable. If you've had a moment where you've been able to share completely open with someone, doesn't that feel like lightning? Like when you've been able to share with the right person at the right time, doesn't like that you feel different? Like you feel lighter when you're able to get that stuff off your chest. There's a reason why those types of relationships help you feel like there's something right in the world because there is something right with that. It's freeing. It's the foundation of an authentic relationship is vulnerability. The second art we're going to look at is this. It's honesty. Curious to know, just when I say the word honesty, what's a definition that comes to mind for you? You can just say it. Yeah.
Like being 100% truthful.
Sure.
Yes, like saying what you want to say without lying whatsoever.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. Anyone else? Any thoughts? Is there just like a general like second? That feels good. Yeah, so that was a great answer. The honesty is a true art of friendship. What I'd say, basically saying what you just said, Kadrian, if vulnerability means having the courage to speak the truth about ourselves, honesty is having the courage to speak the truth about others. Honesty is having the courage to speak the truth about others. Now, I want to know this. Does anyone in the room struggle to be honest? You don't have to raise your hand. You don't have to raise your hand. Anyone struggle with being honest? Or if you're not identifying with that question, maybe ask it a different way for a second. Any people pleasers in the room? Raise your hand for this one. Any people pleasers in the house? A lot of us probably are even more people pleasing than we'd like to say we are. Don't you you've got that one friend who you can show them a picture of you and they'll be like, oh, that's a great picture of you. And you're like, I don't know if I want to post it. And they're like, no, you should post that picture. I think it looks great. Here's the thing about honesty. It's an art of true friendship because truth is important. But there's nothing fun about someone holding up a mirror to you. Like if you've ever been told something in honesty or someone has told you something in truth, it probably didn't feel very good. But have you ever been told something like that and you're like, oh man, I really needed to hear this? Honesty is an art to be practiced. But honest conversation is so important for two things. Here's two things that make honest conversation important. First one is encouragement, and the second one is cautions. We need both of these things, honestly, to thrive in life. We all need encouragement. If you've ever been on the receiving end of a text or a message like this, you may have gotten someone who said like, oh my gosh, you are so good at track. I don't know. Or like someone was like, hey, you really impressed me when you did this thing. Or like, hey, you're really gifted at this. Gosh, doesn't that feel so cool? When someone comes up to you and says something like that, like, hey, your like mustache is like amazing. Like there's different things that feels good to get, like this encouragement is needed. It's what Christians are actually called to do. These moments of encouragement are not extraordinary moments with friends. They should actually be normal conversation to build people up. to do as Christians. But a friend without the ability to caution you also wouldn't be much of a friend at all. We need cautions. I'd say we do this well in life, but we need more. We need encouragement just as much as we need cautions. What I mean by this is it's conversation that feels really foreign to us, but it's things where it's like, hey, I don't think you've been like your best self. Or it's things where you can say, like, hey, this doesn't sound like you at your best. Or, hey, lately I've been noticing you like seem like really upset. Is something going on? Like, or I don't know if this is like the right direction for you. These are like honest comments that are really hard to hear sometimes. But they're also really important. And they're important because no matter how much time you spend with someone, if you don't speak words of vulnerability and honesty with a friend, you might not be friends at all. No matter how much time you spend with someone, if you're not honest and vulnerable with someone, you might really not be friends at all. But gosh, like words are so powerful, aren't they? Like to speak words to someone, like anyone in the room know the power of words to like build up but also destroy a relationship. Oh my goodness, words are so powerful. There's a reason why in Proverbs it says that the tongue has the power of life and death. Do you resonate with those feelings? There's a reason why, because words are dangerous. Words are important. When I think of the words vulnerability and honesty and caution, I'm not going to lie, it makes me uncomfortable. As I'm writing this, the thought of being vulnerable and honest with someone is actually like, I had anxiety writing this message, thinking about even this conversation with Zach, like trying to realize that I had to be honest and open with someone else. But it's dangerous to tell someone a caution without love, to be vulnerable without authenticity or whole truth. Bless you. To be cruel about a current reality instead of hoping for a better future. This is not vulnerability. This is not honesty. It's cruel. The words to master friendship, it's really tough. Words are a really dangerous tool. But you know who was the master of using words for friendship? It was actually Jesus. And that sounds like, I know, shocking. Pastor said that Jesus is the answer. That's crazy. Here's the thing. Jesus not only mastered the art of vulnerability, if we go back to that John verse, what he said was, I've told you everything the Father has told me. There's nothing else that I can tell you. I've told you it all. I've completely been open with you. He also mastered being honest, both encouraging and rebuking and cautioning his friends. By the way, when I say caution, the word you might read in Scripture is rebuke. That word sometimes carries some more weight. It's the same word, rebuke and caution. By the way, Jesus' disciples were his friends. These were like the people that he hung out with. And one of his friends, Peter, Jesus had some really powerful words for. If we go to the book of Matthew in 15, 16, 17, Peter is around Jesus a lot of the time. And Peter and Jesus are talking, and Jesus is essentially saying to him, there's a story where he says, like, hey, who do people say I am? And he answers, and Jesus says to Peter, hey, who do you say I am? And Peter says, you are the Son of God. Gosh, someday I'll stop coughing. Thank you so much. And Jesus responds to him and says this, now I say to you, you are Peter, which means rock. He says, and upon this rock, he's saying, upon you, Peter, I will build my church. The powers of hell will not conquer it. I'll give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Now, there's another story that we maybe have heard, Peter. Maybe we haven't heard this story. That's okay if you haven't. There's literally in the same exact story, the same exact conversation with Jesus, where Jesus just tells Peter, he says, hey, on you, I'm going to build my church. Jesus turns to his other disciples and he starts saying, hey, I am not going to be with you for much longer. He's talking about his death on the cross, saying, hey, I'm actually going to die soon. I won't be with you for much longer. And Peter speaks up and he says, Jesus, there's no way. And the scripture says that Peter pulls him to the side and says, like, Jesus, how dare you say that you're going to die? That's not true. In the same conversation that Jesus said, hey, Peter, on you, I'm going to build my church. He said, get behind me, Satan. That's a huge difference in the way he's using his words. There's a really big difference here because he both encourages Peter and also rebukes him. This is a rebuke that he gives to Peter. These powerful statements happen in the same conversation because Jesus knew the power of his words. And if Jesus used the power of honest words to build up the good in people and bring attention to the bad in people and his friends, shouldn't we as well? Jesus is the master of words and friendship. Because the arts of vulnerability and honesty reflect the image of God, to be a friend like Jesus. So where do we start Where do we build how do we build like a friend? You may have people in your circle who like weren't in the center at all. You may have people who are way further out. You may not like know, you may like, I'm sorry if this uncovered this for you. You may be sitting here, you may be like, oh my gosh, I couldn't really think of one person to put on this page. I want to give us just a few really quick tips to how to start to build friendships that mirror the image of Jesus. Here's where it starts. This is the first one. This is going to be like so profoundly simple and stupid and awkward. So just putting that out there. If you don't know anyone who you can be fully yourself with and fully loved by, who you can be honest and vulnerable with, you got to take some time to start building a friendship. Here's how a friendship starts. It starts with this sentence right here. Hey, we should be friends. That's like super, super simple. Can you imagine, like, I just want to be honest for a second. This feels really awkward. Does it not? To like walk up to the person who you've been kind of just knowing in class or whatever to be like, hey, we should be friends. I think we should be best friends. What do you think? Feels super awkward. If you want to start building a friendship, man, this is a great way to start. To just be, this is a vulnerable moment to be like, hey, I think we should be friends. Because we're not, and I'd like to be friends with you. This is a great way to start this conversation. The second one is this: if you've got someone you find the right person, the right time, and you've got someone who you want to be vulnerable with and open up to, maybe you've been dealing with some stuff, you've been feeling like you wanted to talk to someone about it, and you've got a friend that you want to talk to, a great way to start that conversation is, hey, can I share something important with you? For me, with Zach, it was this conversation. I said, like, hey, man, I've got something that's been going. Is it okay if we talk for a second? Now, these two statements right here, these like, hey, let's be friends, or like, hey, can I share something important with you? Gosh, can I tell you, out of all I say awkward a lot. I've said awkward since day one that I've been here. This might be some of the most awkward conversations you can have. But like when we embrace awkward moments, like I can't tell you the moments where there have been awkward and difficult things in my life to share about have been the most powerful and profound moments where I've watched Jesus move. I've watched Jesus like grow in me. I've watched my relationship with Jesus grow. I've watched my relationships with my friends grow because I've had awkward moments where I was vulnerable and honest. This is what it's like to have Jesus as a friend, someone we can be honest with and vulnerable with. Friendship is an art that requires intentionality and courage and sincerity. And what we get when we do vulnerability and honesty, when we share vulnerability and honestly, is we mirror Christ's example of friendship. It makes space where we can be fully known and fully loved. And over the next weeks at Movement, what we're going to do is help bring new light to the battle for friendship, where you can be fully known and fully loved. This is what a friend is. Each week, we'll unpack a few arts to be practiced. You'll learn what it means to be a good friend, how to find good friends, and what to do when friendship gets hard and loneliness seems undefeatable. Will you pray with me, and we're going to go to small groups. Jesus, thank you for this week, and tonight, in the middle of our week, we get like an opportunity to pause and have fun together with our friends. And Jesus, you called us friends, but you are like such a good friend to us. You're like the pinnacle example, Jesus, of someone that we can talk to totally open, that knows us completely fully and still loves us anyway. So you're calling us to a different level of friendship, not just knowing people, but being deeply known and deeply loved and knowing people fully and loving them deeply. It's an example of what you do for us, Jesus. Help us identify and call us to that level of friendship, Jesus. All of it rooted in the fact that we want to know you more. God, I pray for any friendships in the room or relationships that we have that feel like they're strained. For the person in the room who maybe felt like they didn't have a lot of people who they could share with, God, a great place to start is with you. So God, we pray that for honesty and vulnerability with ourselves to you, Jesus, this week. Thanks for this time. Bless our small groups. We pray all this in your name. Amen.